My name is Rosalind Hayes, and I'm a private voice, piano, and guitar teacher in the Chester County, Pennsylvania area. And today I'm going to talk to you about how to find your appropriate vocal range. Whether you're a soprano, the highest female voice type, an alto, a tenor, or a bass, or a baritone. So vocal range is a really complex thing in determining someone's voice part. We have to also take into consideration factors like timbre, whether we have a brighter sound or a more husky, darker sound, as well as other factors like the range of the voice. But really, roughly speaking, your vocal range is determined not so much by how high or low you can sing, although that's important too. It's more determined by where your voice naturally wants to shift from chest voice into head voice. And it's kind of a given thing to a certain extent. I mean, as children, we all start with higher voices, and then our voices grow and mature and develop, and the larynx it becomes more mature. Okay, but once we're settled into our voice type, that's pretty much what we're going to be, because it has to do with the size of our vocal cords and the size of our larynx itself. So I can tell a little bit usually by listening to someone's speaking voice when they come in for lessons where their voice part probably is. I've had sopranos come to me beforehand saying, "Oh, I was always placed in an alto range in choir," because they've never really found their head voice before, and that's as high as they could really go. They couldn't go into their head voice, so as soon as they started going into that higher range, their voice was cracking, and they thought, that's the end of my range, so I'm an alto. And it's really important to determine where your voice part is so that you can be properly placed in choirs and sing the right repertoire for your voice, because singing out of your range for a long period of time can be really detrimental to your voice. Whether or not you have those notes in the song doesn't really matter. It's more about where is your comfortable range of singing, and that really has to do with where does your voice naturally want to shift into head voice. So the sopranos, they tend to speak in a slightly higher range, altos tend to speak in a lower range, and so on and so forth. So if you are a soprano, your voice is probably going to want to shift into head voice. That's that lighter sound, which feels like it's back here, somewhere between, let's say, A5 and D5. Okay, that's the A above middle C and the following D. Okay, our very high sopranos, usually C sharp D, they like to shift into head voice. That voice naturally wants to shift into a more open laryngeal placement. So that's sopranos. Mezzo sopranos, which are between alto and soprano, generally seem to want to shift somewhere between F and G sharp, F4 and G sharp 4. Okay, so those are the notes above middle C. We often call these notes, these switch points, passaggio notes too, because it's the passage between chest, that lower placement, that lower, more resonant sound where the larynx is actually more constricted, into head voice where it's more of an open, more breathy sound. Okay, so it's that passage between the two voices, and oftentimes for many people that's a very difficult place to sing it, and that's why we want to be careful about our repertoire selection, because if we're picking a song that's not in our voice part, we could end up staying in the passaggio for a long period of time, which is not a very comfortable place for most people to stay in for an extended period of time. But that passaggio really depends on your voice type. So as far as altos go, anywhere usually from D to E above middle C, they like to shift into that head voice placement a little bit more. That doesn't mean that, and again, when you shift into these head voice placements, it doesn't mean that you are totally in your head voice. It just means that you're in a more open, more head voice orientation than you were before. Okay, so it's going to feel like the sound is more back here when you're singing, and it's going to feel like the larynx should be open, more wide, and it's going to feel like a lighter sound. It's a more flexible sound. Tenors. Tenors want to shift somewhere between A4 and C4. That's the A below middle C and the C and middle C itself. So somewhere around there, maybe even as high as D4, okay? They usually like to shift around there to a lighter placement. Most men are not tenors. Most men are baritones, okay? The male voice reaches full maturity around age 35, and the female voice reaches full maturity around age 28. So you have to be really careful in making a total diagnosis of your voice if you're younger than that, especially if you're around that age of 13, 14, and especially if you're a guy, because there's a lot of change happening in your voice around that time. Baritones, again, like to shift somewhere between, F and G sharp below middle C. That would be F3 and G sharp 3. And our basses, again, it's anywhere from D to E3. So those places are where our voices are going to want to pull back. Now, to really test this out, you have to exercise some body awareness here. The first thing to do might be to really practice talking in your different resonances, especially when you're a guy. If you're a guy, most guys tend to confuse, sometimes in my experience, their falsetto with their head voice, and they're two different things. Falsetto with guys is kind of like a Mickey Mouse voice. It's like super, super high. And unfortunately, I can't completely model that for you because I'm a woman. So, but we have these different placements. Chest voice is going to feel like it sits really, really low. And then we can have more of a chest voice mix with head voice in there. And then we can have more of a head voice mix with a little bit of chest voice. And then we can have our head voice. And above that would be, for men, the falsetto range, which is going to feel really open and really breathy and like a little bit like Mickey Mouse. Kind of like you're trying to speak like a woman in a woman's register, okay? So practice talking and feeling those placements first. Then the next thing that I would do is go to the piano or whatever instrument you have and find, find that place where you suspect that your voice may be shifting. Go a few notes below that. For women, I would say, maybe start on, let's say, A4, okay? And for men, I would say start around A3. And then you're just going to sing, I really feel where that sits. For me, A4 is pretty solidly in my chest voice because I'm a soprano. And I can feel the sound moving up a little bit more. And right around the A, my voice wants to shift into head voice. Mine is usually, some days it's A, sometimes it's B flat. So it's more of a lower soprano range, okay? That doesn't mean that I can't hit some super high notes, okay? If I was a little bit warmed up, I would be hitting, as high as some days F6, okay? F sharp 6. But it's more about where does my voice want to shift into head voice. So check it out. Start on A3 if you're a guy, A4 if you're a girl. That's the third A on the piano if you're a guy from the bottom. The fourth A on the piano if you're a a woman, and you're going to move up slowly and feel where that voice wants to shift. But I would definitely encourage you to get a voice teacher too, who can really help you listen for this sensation and pay attention to your body a little bit more, and can, help you along and figure out where your voice really wants to shift, and help you determine that voice part. If you're interested in lessons with me, I do teach online. Please visit doremilessons.com, DORAYMI lessons.com to learn more. All right, thank you so much. Bye.